I'm starting to wonder if the hour-long dog chat we just had would have been a better podcast than the podcast we're about to make.
So I've had similar thoughts, but a dog podcast, it's just you're fighting against anything that's probably like die-hard dog fans might listen.
Yeah.
But everyone else, they just want to see dogs. They don't want to hear about dogs.
Guys, if you want the comic literate dogcast...
Dogcast is a good one,
Write
yes.
in. It would be better than the Codcast. Do you remember Codcast?
I remember the concept of Codcast. Dogcast would be far more interesting, but what will be everything else is videos and pictures of dogs. That's the rules. Woof. Hello and welcome back to the Comic Literate Podcast, the podcast where I, Ryan, soon to be known as Comic Stan, call that because I'm a comic book reader, and what I've got here is a bloody book reader.
Hello.
Ew. But because he's a book reader, I make him read comic books and then make him talk about them in a way where we try and cover the best, the worst, and the middest of them all. You know what I'm saying? And speaking of a co-host, my aforementioned co-host is the mutant co-host Jamie.
You're getting better at that, man.
I'm trying to free throw every time because it's such a wordy thing.
Yeah.
If you write, and I've noticed this because I've been producing a video which will be
Have
releasing.
you, Ryan?
Yes, and one thing I noticed is when I first wrote a script, it was way too like presenter-y, if that makes sense. It's because I'm so used to voiceover work where it's all very kind of like, hello and welcome to like that kind of, what's the word?
A bit corporate.
Yeah, that cadence. And then when I was editing, now I'm spending hours editing the video.
Listening
I'm like,
to your own voice.
Yeah, and I'm like, I hate the way I've written this because it's too formal. And if you know me, I'm anything but formal.
Anything but formal. It's weird because
Exactly.
we're both launching. Well, I'm relaunching a YouTube project at the moment, and you're launching a YouTube project, and our processes couldn't be more different.
And I think it's a good kind of test of like strengths and weaknesses, like what works, what doesn't. Not all the same stuff is going to work for the same people, you know? And speaking of people, Deadpool's a person, and it's the culminative week of Merc with a Mouth month.
So this is the culmination of everything we've been working on for the past month.
Yep.
So today is a really exciting episode because it's a first for the podcast.
I mean, I'll tell you what, going by the reading material alone, which is a little snap window, I think, for what we're going to get into, it really feels like more of a, and it ends not with a bang, but with a whimper.
Yeah.
But we've got some tricks up our sleeves that is going to make it an exciting episode.
Well, should we tell them?
Well, I've got a surprise even for you. But
Okay, cool.
You announce the thing that you know about.
So the first half of the podcast is going to be us talking about the most recent Deadpool title.
Do we make it the first half or the second half? And I'm springing this on you now, but I think having read the comic we're doing, by the way, we're doing Deadpool 2024, the currently releasing Deadpool title is what we're doing. Saying that, should we do that in the first half? Because I feel like we should end on what I think will be the more positive part of the episode.
Because we're doing our first ever movie review.
A comic book movie review, and that's how we justify doing it on the Comic Literate Podcast.
Because we've spent a month talking about Deadpool leading up to the release of the Deadpool movie, which comes out as of this half of the recording in a couple days.
Yep, exactly.
And then we're going to come back in a few days once we've seen it and we're really excited about it and we're going to give our review of it.
We're not doing the midnight Wednesday
because
release
that's...
we're too old for that. I might fall asleep, and I'm really excited about the film, and I don't want to fall asleep. So, Thursday, as and when, schedule's pending, but we will have a review out, which will seamlessly be added to this episode.
Seamlessly?
Yeah.
Seamlessly.
Seamlessly be added to this episode as if we're doing it right now, if that makes sense.
Totally. There's going to be some movie magic.
Some editing magic.
Some wizardry.
Wizardry, yes. Some mutant superpowers of editing, of audio editing.
You're going to use your healing factor to knit these two separate audio recordings together.
Yep, exactly.
I like that one.
Yep. I'm going to take all the cut out pieces, not that we ever cut out anything, but I'm going to put those together into kind of a freak version of the episode, which is also something that happened to Deadpool once.
Yeah, and absolutely.
There's a little clue for that, for something that I'll be springing on you later.
Awesome.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. It's actually, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a little bit. It's a game that people can play at home.
Oh, great. I love that.
Exactly.
So, should we start with the credits?
Yeah, let's start with the credits of this title.
I'm in such a good mood today, Ryan. I'm even okay with the structure.
The structure is what we need, I think, to get through this this talking about a comic, because, well, that's a little clue for once we'll get into it. But as I said, we are covering 2024 Deadpool. There's only 4 issues out, which I thought maybe they'd have, I don't know, either start one when the movie comes out or have enough out that there's something to sink your teeth into. Yeah?
Also, we're reading 4 issues of what is very explicitly a 5-issue run.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not thrilled about that, but that's just the way it's all shaked out.
But also, I don't think we needed that 5th issue to really make a judgment, if you know what I'm saying. So the credits are, this is a title written by a Cody Ziglar, who I realized afterwards was actually the writer of the Miles Morales title that we did previously.
Well, that stands to reason, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? For reasons we will get into, which we're not going to just, well, in a very due time. It was also penciled by Roge Antonio and colors by someone who goes by the moniker Guru-eFX.
Sick.
They have a real name. I don't know. I've not made a note of it here. I can't remember. I think it might be Michael, but they go by the pseudonym Guru-eFX. So,
and we know a little thing about pseudonyms here, don't we, Comic Stan?
Exactly. Sad myths for grown-ups.
Yeah, myths for sad grown-ups.
Myths for
sad grown-ups.
I always forget which part's the sad part.
Yeah.
Really, all of this. What we do.
Oh, don't say that.
We do. And yeah, a new era for the Merc with a mouth, as they said. Do we start with the arting, or should we just get into what we really think of this comic overall?
Let's start with the arting.
I made one note
I
about
can see you're chomping at the bit to talk about what you do and don't like about this comic.
One of those.
But for once, I'm insistent on structure.
Okay.
Structure, baby.
You can tell that the structure, I'm more excited about the structure and I'm more excited to talk about the comic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because what it is the structure allows me to pinpoint, like, focus my attention in parts that I loved, if that makes sense. Or if I loved one part more than the other, I can separate them, you know.
So when I really like the comic, I'm aiming for a more freeform conversation with you where we just kind of get into it. When I'm less excited about it, I think the structure helps keep me in the recording.
It's interesting how we're opposite in that way.
Well, Ryan, to be honest with you, whilst we're very different people, aren't we?
We are and we aren't. Like oil and water, or chalk and cheese in some ways.
Yeah.
But in other ways, we're like, I don't know, Deadpool and Cable.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, I'm definitely the Cable of the two.
I was about to say, oh no, I'm either Cable.
Nah, you're of the two, you're the Deadpool for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
It's like a 2-person version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing, which I've already established. I'm Donatello and you're Michelangelo.
Yeah, I'm definitely Michelangelo, aren't I? So, the art.
I made one note about the art.
Yeah.
Very Marvel House style.
Yeah, this is it, isn't it?
I would call it uninspired for the most part.
One of the things that I really that this whole process, this past month, has helped me recognize is that, to my eyes, there has been a homogenization of the art styles in Marvel.
Yes.
Over the past 30 years.
I would say, to me, each decade has its own house style.
Yes, but yeah, and I suppose, yeah. But this is very much the modern house style. I don't dislike any of it.
I didn't dislike it, but I also didn't have much reaction to it at all.
I thought there were some really lovely moments.
Yeah.
So his Venom dog.
Yeah, symbiote dog.
His symbiote dog. There was a panel where it was fighting. That was really rad.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there was a big panel where he was doing like a flippy maneuver. And he came at the end of it and said, oh, they should put that in Marvel vs. Capcom 4.
Yes.
But I love the way that was illustrated, kind of moving through the panel. Again, it wasn't breaking any boundaries. Yeah. It wasn't doing anything particularly new or interesting.
I would call it serviceable.
Yeah, and this is it, isn't it? The art is serviceable.
Which is the least interesting to talk about. And you know me, we've done some comics where we've not been that enthusiastic about, and I will still at least be like, I liked these panels that did this specific thing. I didn't even have that coming into this. But I think it's maybe because, like, I mean, last week we did my favorite Deadpool comic and one of my favorite comics of all time. And I loved the art in that, even though I wouldn't rank it as any kind of best art. But because it was such a good story, I more closely associate, if I love the story, the art just gets bumped up for me.
Yes.
So I had that, and I just have so little to say about this art.
Yeah, I mean, I think that feeds into the overall sense of this iteration of Deadpool.
I should say, I think one thing that's noteworthy, and this covers kind of all aspects of this comic, this is the first comic that we've done. So we've done one from each decade, kind of give or take, for the time he's been around as a character.
Yeah.
This is the first one we've done post burst of popularity into the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this is a Deadpool that is now a flagship character for Marvel in a way that he definitely wasn't in 97.
No, and nor 2003 or 4 when there was, or 2012.
Yeah, I mean, 2012 is at the point where, as a Deadpool fan, you were rolling your eyes at people saying they loved Marvel and then saying they loved the Avengers films. Because he didn't have his film yet, and so he wasn't this mainstream icon, was he?
So by that point, he had a cult following from the memes.
Yeah.
And the memes, by memes, I literally mean people just took screenshots of the comic, especially that one we did. But they were just taking funny moments from that, and those were being shared on meme websites. So alongside memes, you just had bits of Deadpool comics, and people were like, hey, this superhero character's pretty funny. And especially if there was like violence as well. Like there's one bit in that run, in that first issue, where he gets impaled by a triceratops.
Yeah.
And it goes through him, and the sound effect is like splooge or something. And he goes, ugh, my body's never got splooge before. So like that, just as like a still shot, was something that people were going like, oh, who's this? So soon after that, 2013, and I think I forgot to mention this on the last episode, 2013, he had a video game come out. Very run-of-the-mill video game, but it was very proper Deadpool and a lot of Marvel references and all that stuff. So it was a fun Deadpool game, if as a video game was pretty run-of-the-mill.
Yeah.
But so since then, he had this 2016 film, which burst. That was the thing, obviously, that propelled him while we're doing all this. And now we're at the point where he's become one of those, it feels like he's become one of those too big to risk failing, which I think is sometimes the death knell for comic book characters, because they don't want to take any risks.
But it's the process by which Marvel has this cyclical kind of turn, whereby a character will have a really interesting run. So either they'll have a new character that has a really great run, or they'll have an old character that gets a good run, and they become really popular off the back of that. And they have maybe 5 to 10 years of relatively interesting stories.
Mate, Hawkeye is still famous after 2012 Matt Fraction run.
Yeah. But then there's other characters who are too popular to really do anything with, and they just kind of become background noise in a Marvel mainstay.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened to Deadpool now, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
Exactly.
He's a Marvel mainstay. It's too big to fail. You're absolutely right. And so the whole thing has become a bit stilted. However, moving into just talking about the comic now, because I think we've satisfied our conversation about the art.
Yeah, full story, full spoilers for the first 4 issues.
Totally. We're just going for it.
Yeah.
We don't have time in this episode because we're doing 2 things. Like, we need to just get on with it, don't we? I don't have as negative a view on it as you do, weirdly.
I don't even think I had that negative a view. I think when you come off something great and then you go on to something that's good and you can't help but compare. Ultimately, my thing with this was boring. That's my kind of ultimate takeaway.
So I liked this vastly less than what we read last week.
Yeah.
I did. I think last week, that 2013 run had really interesting storyline motifs. There was a lot going on. There was a lot of depth there. There were things that I liked in this. So I liked Ellie a lot.
Yeah, I've met her before as a character, and I think I've met her in better written comics. So that I'm comparing to as well. I can see why you'd like her as a character if this is your introduction, because, she seems like a kind of cool, interesting character.
Well, I think she's a really cool, interesting character, and I like the way she was written. I think the way her introduction into his part of the story is a little bit easy.
Yeah.
She just sort of turns up, doesn't she?
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that kind of recontextualizes this relationship, right? This is a spoiler for the very end of the 2012 Deadpool run, right? How it ends right at the end. So if you don't, I highly recommend, if you haven't read it, please go read that and skip this spoiler. I will literally do a time code for a minute just to kind of quickly go over this, because it just recontextualizes,
I mean, you can just put timestamps in the editing, Ryan.
True, I can do that as well. But let's see if we can aim from it, because again, we're on a tight
we're on a budget.
You're on a time budget here. So if that's a thing. So minutes dying now. Spoilers for Deadpool 2012. So right at the end of that, he rescues Ellie from a group called Ultimatum, who I can't remember why. They're just kind of like a nameless, faceless army, essentially.
Okay.
And Deadpool just mows his way through to rescue Ellie, right?
Yeah.
He rescues her, and he has that realization that she won't be safe as long as he has any connection to her, right?
Yeah.
So, and what he wants to do is kill himself, but obviously he can't. So what he does is he takes that drug from, what was his name? Butler. You know, the drug that they were like putting him under with. He overdoses on that to completely wipe his memory.
Right.
So, and again, he still has his basic like I am Deadpool kind of stuff, but he wipes his memory of Ellie and doesn't see her for years to protect her. And that's kind of a way of like that Deadpool from that series kind of kills himself at the end. But Deadpool keeps going.
Yeah.
And I noticed a significant drop in quality of writing of Deadpool after that.
Yeah, and that's quite an interesting story motif. And I suppose we've seen that with Dick Grayson, haven't we?
Yep, he got shot in the head, but
similar. But it's similar vibe, isn't it? Like he's still a super. He still knows who he is, but all of his memories have gone, right?
Yes.
And that's a fun way of soft rebooting a character at the end of your run to say this is the end of this continuity. We can't, the universe isn't rebooting at this point or anything, so we need a way to soft reboot it. This is how we'll do it.
Yeah, the next ride is going to be pretty shitty. Like that kind of...
So yeah, but I liked. By and large, I liked her in the story, and I really liked some of the emotional content around her. Like the moment where he finds out that she's not riddled with cancer.
Yep.
And you get that big panel of him, and he's got his mask off, and he's just happy in a way that we don't normally see Deadpool. I thought that was fun and interesting.
I like that he made far less, if any at all, jokes when it came to anything to do with Ellie.
Yeah.
Like any kind of, when he's talking to her just casually, like he goes to visit her at kind of end of the first issue, like he just visits her and gives her a phone and he's just nice. Like there's no jokes or anything. And then later when she's kind of coming back in to his life, he's not kind of like, whoa, and then quirky reference. He's just like, what are you doing here? You need to go. Like, or you're going to be safe kind of thing.
Also, he makes a big point. There's a moment where he tries to walk away from a conversation with her and he turns back and says, no, this is why you lose people. This is why you can't maintain anything in your life. And he turns back and he goes to have the difficult conversation with her.
Yeah.
And so I really liked that there was a certain degree of like this burgeoning self-awareness in him.
Yeah.
And no, because Deadpool's always been very self-aware. He's always been very self-aware, but aware that he's kind of a piece of shit.
Yes.
And this is this is part of that constant character thing that I see from him, where he's trying to better himself. And so I really liked that. And I liked the idea of the most chaotic character in Marvel trying to build something.
Yeah.
And so there was some core concepts here that I liked. It does all of the things I don't like in a comic.
Yeah, like I made all those same notes. Like my biggest gripe with it, I think you'll agree.
Let's go.
Over expositional dialogue.
Like, massively.
Out the ass. Like just so much of it. You know how I sometimes make notes about things. Sometimes it's cool moments. Sometimes it's like, I like this writing technique.
I noticed there wasn't a lot of notes today.
Not nearly as many, but what I did make a few notes about were lines of painfully over expositional dialogue.
Let's go.
And I only made a couple because I just didn't want to fill a page and read them all out. But there was a couple so egregious that I was like, I need to highlight this. So one was from Taskmaster.
Yeah.
I do like Taskmaster. This modern version is better than the one we saw in 94, where he's just kind of like I'm in it for the money. Like he keeps banging on about his field rate, which I liked as a running joke, but it didn't make me laugh at any point. It's like I liked it as a characteristic. Yeah. Because he's just constantly like, this is why you charge a field rate. Yeah. But at one point he's training Ellie because they've discovered she's got powers. And healing powers, essentially. And she's like, hey, you're going a bit rough for me or whatever. And he goes, good, I ain't here to be your friend. I'm here to train you. It's not every day you get to fight Deadpool's kid. Like, if we read the last issue, we know all this. Yeah. And even if you didn't read the last issue, what Marvel does, which I do like, and I think we've disputed this, we've been on other sides of this, I like they have a rundown in the first page before the story starts.
Yes.
So you get all that expositional stuff to be like, hey, if you've just picked this issue up, here's all the information you need to know. Yeah. And then that you can then tell the story without having to worry about that. Yeah. They seem to have forgotten that the information was all on the front page, gone, we need to remind people that Ellie's Deadpool's kid and that Taskmaster is training her. Like, that was just a particularly egregious one. And the one I remember as well was the symbiote dog at one point goes, they're walking along and the dog goes, I forgot, who are we here to kill?
Yeah.
And like, come on, like you've already got a internal monologue narration, which you hate.
I detest.
Exactly. You've already got that to its detriment. You could just put that information there.
Yeah.
You don't need another character to, hey, I forgot. What are we here for? Like,
so I fully agree with you. I have even more issues with the way that story was told.
Yeah.
So the run that we read from 2012, 2013, they had a comedian writing.
Yes. Co-write, which was the best way. You had the comic book writer and you had the comedian.
Yeah. And
bring Brian Posehn back.
Yeah, and so a lot of the jokes are quite topical. And again, they didn't fully land for me, but they were like 10 to 12-year-olds sort of references.
And also, if you're reading this, like if you weren't reading it for this podcast, in the same way of like any kind of sketch show or anything with a lot of jokes, even a comedian's stand-up bit, you don't have to laugh at every joke.
No.
You don't remember the jokes you didn't laugh at. You do remember the ones you did.
But there were some that made me laugh.
Yes.
Whereas here, there was a lot of Deadpool making really not funny at all jokes, really bad surface level jokes, and then the interior monologue saying, oh, that wasn't a very funny joke, or I need to think of a joke now. And it's almost as though the writers themselves were struggling to be funny to the extent that they included it in Deadpool's interior monologue.
Is it the hanging a lantern on it technique, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which, again, that's not a technique saying like it's a good thing. That's a bad thing writers do. When like, they acknowledge they write something bad, and then they go, well, if we acknowledge it's bad, we can't be attacked for it being bad.
Yes.
Or we can't be criticized for it being bad, which is just cowardly.
And so,
in my opinion.
Deadpool didn't make a single funny joke. And then almost every time he did make a joke, we see his interior monologue where he goes, well, that wasn't very funny. And I'm like, yeah, it wasn't very funny. And Deadpool is supposed to be funny.
Yep.
And I would be okay with having a not funny Deadpool. I would be I mean, this is the story where his daughter comes to start doing Merc work with him. And so I would be totally okay with having a more serious Deadpool here. And we had that in 97, didn't we?
94. But
94.
I'm pretty sure it's 94. You might be right.
In the 90s.
Yes. But the thing about that is he was cracking wise for the first 2 issues before the serious stuff happened. So it created that contrast. Yeah. Whereas here, he was not funny and then he was serious.
Well, yeah, but even when he was not funny, he was trying to be funny.
Yes, and that's the problem.
Exactly.
I appreciated when he was no longer trying to be funny. That was a bit of a contrast, but yeah, when it was painfully obvious they were trying to be funny and they weren't. And I'll say this as well, just to try and not be sound too much like an asshole. I think it is too much to expect a comic book writer to be hilarious. Yeah. That's not their job. That's not like what they have been doing. If you've got a comic book writer who has written hilarious stuff, bonus, and then you get them on Deadpool. But here I think they are just getting like this writer done Miles Morales Spider-Man and a few other bits as well. And I think they looked at that and went, oh, Spider-Man is wisecracking. So we get him on
like the Miles Morales run he did?
I think we found it similar to this, just run of the mill. Yeah,
right,
just kind of but by the numbers, basic kind of
Well,
thing.
I don't remember it.
And here's the thing, if Spider-Man's not funny, you don't remember it as vividly. Like he's known for wisecracking, but not for necessarily being hilarious. Deadpool is known for being very funny character.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think it's asking too much for just a single comic book writer to be funny. So don't
do that with Deadpool. No. Like, I imagine there would be a queue of comedians round the block who would willingly work for pennies to write jokes for Deadpool. Yeah, exactly. And even, I mean, they're paying all these writers. Like, if you split the bloody cost or whatever, they're only writing like half the stuff. They're writing an outline of the story, and then you have the comedian writing the dialogue. Yeah. So it's less time for either party as well. And again, this is coming from someone who's never in a comic, so maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe we should write a comic just to see. Yeah, should we try and write a funny one? Yeah, should we try and write our own rip-off Deadpool run? Because let's be frank here, Deadpool's already a rip-off. Yep, he is, yeah. We call it Pool Dead. that'll be safe from the lawyers. Yeah, absolutely. And then we could just do it. We could just make it really British. Yeah. Dead. What's the dead cunt? I would say we put ours like, and you're cancelled. Death cunt. It'd just be death cunt. Sounds like a Swedish metal band where they don't like understand English enough for the nuance, so they just take like yeah. Like, well, there was one. I think there's a Bill Bailey joke. It was like, "What do you call it? Anal hammer?" Like that sounds
foreboding.
It sounds daunting. Yeah,
but there's no subtlety at all. So I'd be like that. I'll tell you one thing I didn't like. I didn't like the symbiote dog.
Oh, I liked it.
So here, the main reason I didn't like it, they were kind of, I was neutral to them. Like, they weren't doing anything for me. And I realized in kind of issue 3 or issue 4, I realized if you took the symbiote dog out, the story would be exactly the same. This is a character who's been given time and dialogue, but it's not moving the story forward at all. And that would be fine if they were at least funny, but they're not even funny.
They're quite earnest.
They're an earnest expositional character.
I mean, there's that moment where he loses his arms and legs and then rides the symbiote dog to chase the big bad in issue 1.
But again, that's more Deadpool than the dog being funny.
No, none of that's funny, but the dog is quite literally moving Deadpool around, so he's moving the story along to a certain degree.
Okay, but then you could write anything into that without it being a character. Like, it could have been like a person on a bike or something, or
that would have been way funnier.
Yeah, exactly.
Just some dude like delivering Uber Eats.
he could have voice activated his phone and ordered an Uber Eats, and when they come along, he's like, "Can you? We're going that way, but can you take me the rest of the way there?"
Yeah,
like
that would have been much funnier.
Exactly.
So
we could write our own Deadpool.
So I like the symbiote dog, because I liked the moment where Ellie turns up at his new agency and realizes there's this weird alien who's kind of been filling the void of him having a daughter. And it's like, I think it's a pretty overt and obvious way of showing just how fragile this character's mental state is.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that about it. And I just thought it was a fun concept that he had a symbiote that had taken over the body of a dog and was just hanging out with him.
I don't even know if it took I think it just took the form of a dog. I don't think it like...
Well, I was hoping that you would know about this and would be able to explain it to me.
So here's the thing. I know a bit about it because there was a short run before this one, similar to that She-Hulk one, you remember? So when we did She-Hulk, that was a carry-on from a title that just ended. I don't know who wrote the previous one, so I don't know if it was the same writer and they've renumbered it number 1 like those crafty bastards do, or what. But I remember trying it because I try every Deadpool number 1 that comes out, because it comes out and I go, maybe this one will be rekindle the fire I had for 2012 Deadpool, like I keep banging on about, and I will continue to do so. But but I checked that one and I read the issue where he got the symbiote put in.
So how did that happen?
So he was fighting someone and they had symbiote as a weapon and they injected into him. I think very loose recollection here.
Yeah.
They think they put it in him not realizing he had a healing factor.
Right.
So when normally the symbiote would have come out of the person and killed them, whereas it came out of him and he was like, hey. And the symbiote's like, hey, I just burst out here. And then I just switched off after that.
Right.
I stopped reading because it just wasn't that good. So all this to say, I remember this much, and my main kind of question was, why did you need to carry over the symbiote dog? Like, was that so essential to this story they're now telling that they needed them there?
I kind of liked him having a sidekick.
Again, you could have a sidekick, but if they're in a Deadpool comic, they need to be a funny sidekick. Or like an interesting one like Preston. It was in the 2012 one, which I will keep referencing. But she was like a challenging, opposing character, even though they're friends. But like, she was such a different kind of character that they clashed on things and they were working towards the same goals.
No, I think I do agree with you that the dog didn't move the story along at all, other than that one moment where he rode it for a bit. And it wasn't really doing much legwork. It wasn't doing anything interesting. It was kind of like they couldn't give it too much personality because it's a symbiote. So that, you know, they can't have too much of a human personality, can they? Because they're just this alien goop.
No, I mean, some symbiotes have personality. I mean, you could argue they built off the hosts they're on. So like Venom is obviously a big one on Eddie Brock. The Carnage symbiote is very psychotic because they're on a psychopath serial killer.
Right.
So yeah, I guess if they haven't had a host yet, then maybe they haven't developed a personality yet.
I've not really delved into Venom yet.
No, and we will one day, but Venom's been all over the place recently as well. Someone on Reddit posted that they caught up on Venom just because they were like the favorite character and they wanted to see what had happened in the time they hadn't been reading.
Okay.
And they explained what happened in like the last run, and it was, Super Shenanigans.
Yeah.
This was literally just line by line the things happened, and it looked all over the place. Like I was like, and then Eddie Brock becomes the symbiote god, but then he's beaten by this character that was just introduced, and then now his son has gone to the future and has grown old and come back or whatever. And I'm like, I read these bullet points. I was like, this sounds awful. Like, maybe the execution was better, but also that I tried that same Venom comic and gave up because I.
So it might be one that we have to avoid for a little while until something good comes out.
Or we just criticize it, like as we're doing with this.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, this is one of those really challenging ones to talk about, isn't it? Because it's not truly awful. It does a lot of things that I don't like, but a lot of comics do. The story itself, to be honest with you, just kind of feels like
cliched.
Yes, although I was probably going to dress that sentence up a bit more. I was going to say
like cliches that I noted down.
I felt that it was a bland amalgamation of all of the other Deadpool stories we'd read.
Yes.
So Deadpool is being chased by a cult. Deadpool is being sent to retrieve MacGuffins. Deadpool is just doing very generic mercenary work.
Yeah.
I suppose the intrigue will come in, I think, when we watch him building his own, gang of mercs. And so potentially if it gets a second run, because they're kind of four fifths through a 5-issue arc at the moment, it might not carry on.
But here's the problem: is the reason they play it safe with these kind of characters is because there's a certain number of people who just buy it regardless.
Yeah,
and that's why they feel like, oh, we can't take any risks because we might lose the people who are buying it regardless of quality.
And Deadpool's red hot right now.
Yes, exactly. And this is why I was like, why aren't you doing more with the character while the biggest film of his run is coming out?
Yeah, this is the end of the trail.
Yeah, he's jumping into the MCU, the biggest possible thing that could happen to the character, since he's the only one from the Fox universe that is carrying on. Outside of him, it's the Spider-Man from the Sony films.
Yeah,
he's the only Fox character to do this because he's so popular.
Yeah,
it's such a big deal. It's been years in the making.
So did he get bundled in with the X-Men originally? Is that how he ended up with Fox?
So he's considered so the Fox bought primarily the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Yeah. And then, as I've said before, when you buy a character or a team, there's a ancillary group that they get with them.
And Deadpool came with the X-Men, basically.
Yeah, because he was introduced in X-Force, and he's mutant adjacent. He's definitely an X-Men character. Yeah, so,
huge things are happening for this character. And this run, I mean, potentially there could be people who are cinema goers, they're film people, or they're just people who watch films, who want to try a comic book, and they're like, I fucking love the first two Deadpool films, the third one's coming out, oh, there's a new Deadpool, I'm going to read it. And what they're getting is possibly, for me, the worst iteration of the character that I've read. And I know we've not read all Deadpool leading up to this, but I think we've done a pretty good dip test over the past month.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously skewed in the ones I like the most, but I've got to think those the most popular ones. And tell you what, when I was looking up which to do, I looked up a bunch of lists, best Deadpool comics, which ones should you check out? And we've done a decent amount from those ones. Yeah. Including the run that The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly we did last week was in that list specifically, that arc. But there was also the first ones, the Dead Presidents one, which, again, is one of my favorite ones. That was a separate entry in a lot of lists. So my favorite one had 2 separate entries. But then the 94 one was essential. It's it might not be as good as these other ones, but it's still kind of essential if you want to see where the character started from, and blah, blah, blah. Cable and Deadpool, biggest team up of his career kind of thing.
I don't think you'd be missing out if you missed this one.
No, I think with this, you made a good point about if people pick up a comic and get this their first entry. I feel like I'd be interested to see what this kind of comic is so abundant. There's Batman comics like this, there's Superman comics like this, there's Spider-Man comics like this, where it's just by the numbers and it's cliched, stereotype comic stuff. If this is your first comic, would you enjoy it because you don't know the stereotypes as much? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's very tropey, isn't it?
Because I made notes of things that I thought these are.
Yeah, let's talk about your specific cliches.
So one was this character who appears and literally propositions Deadpool and says, I'm putting a team together. Like, that is the most superhero comic thing I've ever.
I mean, there's an
read.
entire Rick and Morty episode about people putting teams together, isn't there?
Well, yeah, and that's yeah, and Deadpool did not give a "you son of a bitch, I'm in."
Yeah,
like, he gave the heroes, was it the heroes rejection or something?
Rejected the call to action.
Exactly. Yeah, he gave that. And his the big bad in this, again, just a bland as hell character who's they're just going for like he's a bit weird but he's dangerous. Like,
so he was so bland that for most of it I couldn't tell him from the people in his cult.
Yeah, exactly.
For the most part I couldn't tell the difference.
You're like,
between him.
Those guys are bowing to this guy, so I guess he's the main one. But you wouldn't, if they weren't doing that, you wouldn't tell them apart.
And again, you know, we're asked to follow this subplot around them. You get like 3 or 4 panels an issue where they're doing stuff, and they're looking for a MacGuffin that for some reason will allow them to, I think, get rid of Deadpool's healing factor. Is what I worked out by the end of it. Yeah. But again, I've seen Deadpool lose his healing factor to a certain degree. As well. Yeah.
Another Deadpool comic where he's losing his healing factor, and that him and Wolverine. That's that constantly. They've both lost their healing factors like 100 times between them.
And I suppose, to a certain degree, that's the only way you can really threaten a character that has a healing factor. Because what else can you do to them? I mean, other than perpetual torture.
But then, like, you don't have to threaten the character's own specific livelihood, because in the last one we looked at, it was the Deadpool's potentially having a daughter and people being experimented on because of what they were doing from him and how they were stealing from him, like stealing organs from him. Like, there was this more interpersonal, like, offense.
Yeah. And there's this thing that's built into the character, I think. And this is my observation from the first three that we did, whereby Deadpool has a very specific trigger in...
He has a couple of triggers.
He has a couple of triggers, and one of them is, you know, people getting cancer and getting terminal illnesses. And so that's a fantastic idea that you can play with him. It's a really great way of ramping up tension in a Deadpool story. And it's a really clear motivation that he has that I think is broad enough that you could use it in lots of different interesting ways. And we've seen them make use of it a few times throughout the runs that we've looked at. And here, there's just no existential threat to Deadpool.
No.
He's sort of just cutting about, taking jobs so that he can afford to build this agency. There's no real threat.
And also, I've read a comic previously, like not too long ago, where he had his own mercenary agency.
Yeah, and there was a bunch of people in different coloured Deadpool outfits, weren't there?
That, and I've seen ones where he's just had a bunch of different mercenaries.
Wasn't that part of the second film? Him putting together
that was
a crew.
X-Force. So that was X-Force, which is like the SWAT team department of X-Men.
Right.
But what's funny about that in the film is, like, he's creating X-Force because he's like, it's kind of like a subtle version of, like, he's trying to make his own X-Men.
Yeah.
So he's like, we're going to be called X-Force. And he's been trying to join the X-Men in that film. So it's kind of like well, if you don't have me, then I'm going to make my own team.
I'm going to have my own X-Men, and it's going to be better because there's going to be hookers and guns.
Yeah, blackjack and hookers.
Is that a Futurama reference?
That's a Futurama reference, yes. So with this big bad, like, the specific part I know it was, they were trying to make him be like he's a bit weird, but he's dangerous. And because he's weird, he's even more dangerous because we don't know, but they're trying to do like a Joker-Batman kind of relationship, because what he says is, he goes, as he's leaving Deadpool, who's like writhing on the floor or something, he goes, I think we're going to make something beautiful together.
Yeah, and...
That's such a, like, I'm a psychopath and now I'm obsessed with you.
And we have one more issue. So, as of the end of the 4 issues that we've just read, Deadpool has had his second sort of skirmish with this dude. And this dude had imbibed the MacGuffin. He'd, like, broken up this magical sword and, like, absorbed it for some reason.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about that in a second.
Yeah, and so he's taken away Deadpool's healing factor. Deadpool is surprised at the way this feels for some reason, even though it's happened to him a million times before.
Happened a bunch.
And so we're now about to see issue 5, where he has to fight a death cult knowing that he's no longer immortal. That's essentially what they're teeing up for issue 5.
Which he's done before.
Like, and so even though we're only talking about the first 4 issues, I could almost paint you by numbers what's going to happen in issue 5.
Yeah.
And yeah, that character isn't particularly interesting. I don't think he's fleshed out enough to be a good big bad. We don't
not at all.
We barely see anything of him, and what we see is pretty dull.
He becomes the big bad because they just happen to run into each other. And then he's like, ooh, you've got a healing factor. You're immortal. Like, I'm obsessed with you now. Like, that's it. Like, he could have, for such an obvious aspect of Deadpool, he could have been like, ooh, you wear red. I've never seen someone wear red before. I'm obsessed with you now. Like, it could have been as simple as that. So the blade is the Muramasa blade. And the reason I know it is because it's a Wolverine thing. It's the blade. It's the blade that only blade that can hurt Wolverine and inflict injuries on him that don't heal.
Right.
The reason is that, and I'm looking at the wiki. I'm not going to read through. I'm going to give you my badly recalled version of it. It's a blade made by a guy named Muramasa, and he made it by infusing a part of Logan's soul with the blade.
Right.
So the point is, I've made a blade that can hurt you. It's made for you. Like, it's why it's dangerous to you. It can kill you.
So realistically, it shouldn't be dangerous. I suppose because
it shouldn't.
Deadpool got his healing factor from Wolverine. Blah, 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 blah. Shenanigans. So, yeah. And, yeah. I just didn't think it was particularly interesting.
No. I mean, I would have maybe liked to have seen what he'd done with the blade. And then when he made himself one with the blade, so he didn't need the blade, but he took the power from it.
Yeah.
I read that as, so the katana was cool, and now you've taken the katana out of it.
Yeah.
Like, that was the cool part.
Because I thought we were going to get a really sick sword fight.
Yes.
I was thinking, this dude has a sword that can actually hurt Deadpool, and Deadpool's going to have to whip out two katanas and fight this dude with it. And I'm like, you know what? That's a perfectly serviceable ending to this. I get some sword fight fun.
Yep.
Wouldn't even give us that.
No. And I tell you what as well, I didn't like how this writer, and I'm sorry to share on this one in particular, but I just noticed these things. They were using aspects of Deadpool to be a bit lazy with the story.
Yeah.
In a way that I think was meant to come off as a joke.
Yeah.
So there's two specific examples, which I made of that.
I think I know exactly what you're about to say.
One is Taskmaster says, we can't just walk straight into the church wherever, it's going to be a trap. And Deadpool goes, I know, but the writer only had 5 issues to finish this arc.
Yeah.
And I look at that, I go, that's not funny. You're taking the meta-ness of Deadpool and you're excusing not having to do extra work to make it make sense or be interesting, right? And I think of all the other Deadpool we've read, and I've gone, people have done meta stuff, but they've not cut corners on the story.
And so the meta humor here, I know it's a feature of the character, but again, it hasn't in the stuff that we've read. It's not been all over the place. It's been the occasional meta joke that's peppered in.
Yeah,
that you go, huh, funny. Whereas here, Deadpool makes consistent references to which issue things are going to happen in.
Yeah,
and how many issues he has left. And as you say, the writer only having 5 issues to wrap this up. And yeah, I agree with you. It comes off as lazy. I think meta humor is something that so you're cooking a dish, right? And you are, you're seasoning it, you're using your ingredients, you're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Meta humor is your MSG.
I was literally going to say MSG. I should have said it.
It's that big tangy flavor bomb that you go pop and you put a fucking pinch of that shit in. Because it is incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And I think the past couple runs we've had have maybe had 1 or 2 meta jokes in them, which you could fly by if you weren't looking for them. There are moments where Deadpool is kind of staring out of the panel at you and he says something and you go, huh, that was meant for me.
Yes.
And they're funny. But these were so overt and they weren't funny. They were expositional. It was kind of giving you clues as to what the structure of the story was going to be in a way that I didn't really fucking need because the story was so simplistic.
Yeah.
That, I completely agree with you. Every time I saw one, it was like, ugh.
Yeah. The best uses I've seen of the meta stuff is there's a general running thing where, and they didn't do it here, which is a shame because it's a good thing you can just reuse over and over again, is when Deadpool's around other characters, he makes mention to them being comic book characters or whatever, and you have another character visibly reacting to how insane he sounds. Like if in real life, if we were talking to someone and they went, yeah, because we're in a story right now, you'd be like, okay, and slowly backing away from them. And that's the reaction that he gets normally from other characters. And that just reinforces how isolating he is, how his insanity kind of isolates him from other characters, but in a fun way, because he's talking about something that you as a reader go, but he's right though. I know he's right. The other big one I always refer to is when he was killing the entire Marvel Universe, Professor Xavier, who should have been able to shut him down immediately. So the thing is, Deadpool is generally resistant to psychic attack because his mind, his brain cells are
regenerating all the time,
When Xavier gets into his head to try and shut him down, Xavier realizes that him banging on about them being comic book characters is true, and it drives Professor X insane. And again, great use of the meta thing because it combines like that would happen with this character.
And to be honest with you, that first use of it that you were talking about, him just sort of, giving hints that they are within a story to other characters.
Yeah.
That's absolutely what they're aiming for here, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it just doesn't come off.
But here, they're cutting corners on the story.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's like, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Oh, because we're comic book characters.
Yeah.
Like, that's just lazy.
It becomes a catch-all, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think we've said as much as we can on this.
Well, there's some little details that I just wanted to celebrate.
Wow, you got some little bits.
Yeah, I do. It's
Jamie's little bits.
Can you do the intro for me, though? Because I need it.
All right, just little bits.
Little bits.
Yeah.
So, even though there was some expositional content in that training montage with Ellie, I enjoyed that passage. I enjoyed that. I specifically enjoyed when she was doing strength training and Taskmaster says, I'm curious about something. And he says, well, muscles grow through strain and repair, and your muscles are repairing really quickly. And suddenly she gets like loads stronger. And I thought that was quite an interesting sort of application of the healing factor. And so I really liked the way that they they're now teeing up Ellie's power sets based on what she inherited from Deadpool. And so I thought, I think they're doing some interesting development stuff for her character. What I would really like to see, if I'm being completely honest, is a run centered around Ellie where she is interacting with some of the younger Marvel characters. So I'd maybe like to see her interacting with
like the Young Avengers.
Kamala Khan, Kamala Khan, Miles Morales, the Young Avengers.
Yeah.
Like, I'd really like to see her kind of enter that pantheon of adolescent Marvel characters.
It'd be good for other people, like she gets introduced in the kind of team or whatever, and they're like, oh, who are you? And maybe she has a super name or whatever, and they're like, oh, who was your mentor or trainer or whatever? And she goes, oh, my dad's Deadpool. And they all go, ugh.
Yeah, this is it.
Jeez.
Like, I think it'll be really fun for her, who is this, there's just so much scope for really interesting storylines centered around her, where it's like, she's building this relationship with her dad, and he's kind of her entrance into this world of hero work. But also he's kind of a bit of a pariah. And she seems to be like quite a normal, well-adjusted kid. Yeah. And so I really like the idea of balancing her sort of kind of not unique, but her interesting power set, because healing factor is OP.
Yep.
Healing, I mean, we've seen it with Deadpool, we've seen it with Wolverine. It allows them to take on way more powerful characters than them.
They do specify, I think Taskmaster specifies that hers isn't as powerful as his.
Yeah.
But that does call back, even though they don't mention it, it calls back to the fact that his is so powerful because it's constantly working and trained. It's like a muscle that's been so overused that he's like really strong at healing factor because he's constantly healing his cancer. And
so, and I really like the idea of like, because Wolverine has his adamantium claws and his adamantium skeleton. Obviously, Deadpool's power set is really OP. I really like the idea of a young black character, like she's mixed race, isn't she?
Yep.
Going in with all of these young Marvel characters, and her thing is that she's not super strong, she's not super quick, but she does have the healing factor.
Yeah.
And so I think they're teeing up a really fun, interesting character that could do some really great stuff in other places in the Marvel Universe. I just don't think this is the run to introduce her.
Yeah.
Because it's not particularly good.
So here's my thing with the character Ellie. In the 2012 Deadpool run, which I keep saying is the best run that he's ever had, during that run, they had some isolated issues, like kind of dotted across the run, where it jumped to, I think it was 2099. I think it's 2099 because that's where all the future Marvel stuff happens. Like Spider-Man 2099.
It's just far enough away, isn't it?
Yeah, it's technologically advanced. I mean, they might have to push it maybe in a couple decades or whatever.
The same way they have been with Tony Stark.
Yes.
Originally, he got his power. Originally, it was Vietnam that he built the suit, and then it changed to like the first Gulf War, and then it was the second. Do you know what I mean? They'll probably just push it back the same way they do with that.
So the story in this is that Deadpool's like missing, and that Ellie's trying to find him or something like that. And when she finds him, he's like really old because he's aged but a slower rate, but he's like elderly by 2099. And she's like a seemingly no powered kind of trained mercenary, like not even mercenary stuff, but like she's trained in that way. She's competent fighter and everything else. And she's trying to rescue him from his stepdaughter, who is the daughter of like the queen of the demons who he marries.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a little hint what we're about to do in a minute. But so what it turns out is she's fighting to rescue him, and there's maybe a MacGuffin or something as well, and then she gets killed.
Right.
And then it turns out that her mutant power is like a resurrection type thing.
Oh,
so she gets killed. She's like middle-aged in 2099, like 40s kind of thing. She gets killed, and then this cocoon forms around her, and she bursts out at like 16 age.
Sick.
So her power is literally she dies and her body reverts. So I think there's a jellyfish that does that or something, like seemingly immortal because it like literally
I know the one you mean.
Generates like that. But yeah,
I'm not sure that's specifically how it works in that case, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. So that's revealed to be her power. And it's kind of a take on healing factor, but it's more of it bursts all in one go when she dies kind of thing. But so I'm thinking of that character who I thought was really cool because that's a really unique power. Yeah. Like, again, like you say, they're not super powered, but they're very invulnerable, and that's interesting. So now seeing this Ellie, I'm like, this is all right, I guess, but I've got this comparison.
But basically, this is my open letter to Marvel to do something cool with that character and to give them their own run and to do that, because of the 4 issues I've read, she's the most interesting thing.
Yeah, it is also a wild coincidence that they had Taskmaster with them when she develops this incredible mental processing.
Yeah, of course.
And he's there with his photographic reflex memory or whatever. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, great. Like, at one point, I thought, is she stealing powers? Like, you know, like a weird heroes thing.
Like a rogue thing.
Yeah, or I thought that was going to be it for a while. And then it was like, no, she just coincidentally has the powers of her dad, less of a coincidence, her dad's mate who happens to be there. Like, that's what I thought was weird. And she even got it before they met. So, yeah. I thought that was weird.
Anyway, the game.
Yep, so we've got a game, and I've got...
I don't know anything about this. For the listener, this isn't... I genuinely don't know what he's about to ask me to do.
Yep, this is a surprise game for Jamie, and it's one that you can even play at home. And I am going to invoke some technology here in the blank space.
Are you showing? Have you got a PowerPoint presentation?
It's not even a PowerPoint presentation as such. It's just a picture I'm putting up on a big screen because it'll help us both for this.
Okay.
So this is the cover of issue 27 of that Deadpool run from 2012.
Yeah.
And it is the wedding of Deadpool. So this is the front and back cover. And if you're listening at home and you want to play along, just Google the wedding of Deadpool. Right, and you'll find a big double-sized cover because it's the front and back. And what we have is the wedding with about I've got it here, 200 or so characters on it. 232 total characters. I've actually got a different number here as well.
Okay, so can I just pick out some people that I think are interesting?
Well, this is what we're about to get into. So the game aspect is you're going to tell me how many of these characters you know.
Right, okay.
To make it more of a game rather than you just kind of sitting here for ages, we're going to give you 5 lives. So every time, so you're going to make an official guess.
Yep.
And if you're wrong, you lose a life.
I'm fucking into this, mate.
So this gives you the idea to get the ones you know for sure, and then you can move on to like the ones you're a little more unsure of. And also, the reason we're bringing this up, I thought was interesting, this broke the Guinness World Record for the most comic book characters on a cover.
This is fucking rad.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so in the front row, in the groom's party, I see Wolverine, I see Captain America.
I mean, you got to start with Deadpool, obviously. Like, not to...
I see Deadpool.
Yep.
I'll
give you... You don't need to go for the bride because... you don't know her name.
So I see in the front row behind him, I see Steve Rogers.
So, yep, I will... there we go.
I see Logan.
Yep.
To the right, I see She-Hulk.
Yes.
At the back top, I see Spider-Man in a weird Spider-Man suit because it's the Iron Spider suit.
I'm going to have to push you for a name.
Is it the Iron Spider?
No, I'd go for... I'm tricking you here. You know I'm tricking you.
Yeah.
What do you think is his real name?
I don't know.
So I'll take a life for this, and I was planning on doing this. That is Peter Parker inhabited by Otto Octavius, and he's known as the Superior Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
So you're on 4 lives.
I see Thor.
Yep. It starts to rain on the wedding. I read this issue earlier because I was just so excited. And he clears the rain for him.
Oh, cool. That's rad. I see Daredevil.
Yep.
He's next to the Superior Spider-Man. I am seeing... I'm going to assume... No, I'm not going to talk about him yet because I'm not 100% sure on him. So there's quite a few Thor-adjacent characters here, which is interesting. So I'm going to go for another easy one. I'm seeing the Hulk.
Yep.
I'm seeing a big chunk...
The Hulk's a groomsman, which is surprising.
Yeah, I'm seeing a big chunk of the X-Men roster kind of to the left in the middle, but I don't know a lot of them that well. So that's interesting. I'm seeing Red Hulk. I don't know his name.
Yeah, I'll give you Red Hulk. That's how people know him as.
Yeah, I'm seeing Red Hulk. I don't have a Scoob. Oh, the Squirrel Girl. I recognize her from something.
Yeah, Squirrel Girl
She's
is the
Squirrel
name.
Girl, yeah. I'm pretty sure I can make out Rogue. She's right in the middle next to the Thing. So she's the one just over the bride's head in the X-Men suit. I'm just seeing a little wisp of white on the hair, so I'm assuming that's Rogue.
I believe that is Kitty Pryde. I think that's just like a lighter part of her hair from like the light source would be. I'm just going to double check that now because I've got them written down here. Yep, that's Kitty Pryde.
That's Kitty Pryde.
Or Shadowcat, but more commonly known as Kitty Pryde. Okay. So you're on 3 lives now.
Yeah. So I'm now starting to run out of people that I... Oh, no. I recognize the original Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, just underneath Fat Thor in a dress. That looks like Carol Danvers to me.
I think you're right, but let's consult the board.
This is a fun game. I don't think this is going to translate to the podcast very well, Ryan, but it's a fun game.
Oh, it's so 120 is unfortunately is a character called Starbrand who looks a bit Captain Marvel. If you go left from Starbrand by like 5 points, can you see her? She's standing next to who's obviously Black Panther.
Yeah, that's who I meant, mate.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Fat Thor, right? Yep, no, you're right.
Yeah, that's exactly who I meant.
I confused Fat Thor with a character who looks like Thor who's not exactly thin.
Yeah, no, there's the fat one in the dress, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's who I meant. That's Carol Danvers, right?
Yep. You've got Carol Danvers.
So I'm still on 3 lives.
Yeah.
Stood next to Black Panther, obviously.
Yep. I won't give you that because you haven't lost a life, so you're fine.
What's really interesting is the one just underneath the Thing, right?
Yep.
Who I also recognize, and I think that's right.
Yeah. You've got the Thing.
Looks like an Iron Man suit. But it's not. That's not Tony Stark.
I'm almost certain that it is Iron Man, and if it is, I will give you it because you've correctly.
But it's a black Iron Man suit.
I think that was just what he was rocking at the time. Yeah, that's Iron Man. It was just in like a weird kind of reboot in the 10s kind of thing.
Right. Okay. I'm starting to run out because, to be honest with you,
this is where it gets interesting.
A lot of them are quite indistinct. Like,
do you know who's officiating the wedding?
No.
We've seen a version of him recently.
I don't recognize him.
That's Nightcrawler.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to mess his name up, but the bottom right, he looks like Luke Cage.
I think you're right. Let's double check that.
That looks like Luke Cage to me.
Let's consult the board.
Well, it's either Luke Cage or the guy who's played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, Luke Cage.
It's Luke Cage, cool.
Yeah.
So I got Luke Cage right, which means the woman holding the baby is his partner, and I can't remember who she is.
Popular Brian Michael Bendis creation.
Yeah, she's another hero, and we've met her. I just can't remember her.
She's had her own detective agency called Alias.
Yeah, I'm never going to get her. There's a little cat thing just above, kind of up from the Thing and to the right a bit. Big brown head. It's poking out of a big brown head. Part of me wants to say that that's Rocket, but I don't think it is.
Whereabouts, sorry?
So there's a little buggy, like just to the right of the Superior Spider-Man. There's that little cat thing.
Yeah, so that's a dog called Lockjaw, and he's an Inhumans dog.
Yeah, so I wouldn't have, because I for a minute I thought that might have been Rocket. You know, from the... Do you
want me to point out Rocket?
Yeah, please.
He's right down the middle at the front there.
Oh, right, so I never would have guessed that, because I've never seen... I've
never seen a raccoon wearing a suit?
Well, I've also never read a Guardians comic book, so I've only seen the film version of him.
Yeah, and he's definitely more of a raccoon. He's more of a traditional raccoon in the films.
So I'm going to go out on a limb now, and I'm going to say that the white of all the Thor characters, the one in the golden armor with the big white beard, is that supposed to be Odin?
Judges, let's consult the board. I'll put in a drum roll music here as well.
Oh no, that's not Odin because he's not holding. Actually, I don't really know how Odin's depicted in.
I'm gonna have to take your first answer. That was Odin.
Was it Odin?
It's Odin.
Fuck.
Yes.
And then there's a weird horse Thor thing that I'm just never gonna get.
I'd be shocked if you got him. That's Beta Ray Bill.
Right. Okay. And then I'm gonna assume, the far right of all the very Thor-y characters.
Yep.
Is that Jane?
I think you're right, but let's consult the board.
I don't know her surname, but like Lady Thor.
If it is, it's Jane Foster.
Jane Foster.
So it says here Thor girl. I only know one female Thor, and that's Jane Foster. So I'm going to give you that.
Yeah. I'm running out of easy ones.
This is where it gets interesting. And obviously, I'll edit out the gaps in between while you think.
Yeah, of course. The fucking dog on the bottom left underneath the woman in the Deadpool mask with the blonde hair. Fuck knows what's going on with that guy.
He is in the new Deadpool film.
Is he?
Out, yeah. He's being played by, apparently, a dog that was voted Britain's ugliest dog. I'll give you a life-free guess. So this is a shot on the dog. This won't affect your 3 lives from Aining. What do you think his name is?
Dead dog.
Dogpool.
Dogpool.
It was one of.
One or the other.
You looked at both of the words. You went, one of them's dog.
Yeah, it's Dogpool.
I'll give you the same for the blonde woman standing next to him. Like for live free guess.
Is it Girlpool?
It's Lady Deadpool.
Lady Deadpool. So I think the guy next to him on the right with the big flash on his eyes. I think that's Cable.
Yeah, that's Cable.
I'm well happy with that one, mate. So to the left, there's a bunch of really nondescript people. Oh, there's Doctor Strange.
Yep, Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange.
I think, and I don't know this for sure. I think the people to the left of Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
I think they're Deadpool writers. I'm gonna see if I'm correct.
That would be dope. That would be cool.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of writers and colorists there. We've got Declan Shalvey, Geordie Belair, Jerry Duggan.
Cool. Well done.
Jerry Duggan, who did the 2012 comic book run of Deadpool, which I think is the best comic book run of Deadpool. So check out if you can.
He deserves a spot then.
Co-written with comedian Brian Posehn, who added the funnies.
So, in between all the Thor characters is a black Thor. Can you see him with the black beard next to Odin?
Yes.
I want to say that's Tyr, because in cinematic versions, I've seen him depicted as a black guy. So I want to say that's Tyr. Am I wrong?
So I'm going to classify this before I correct you here, because the reason I think you're on this role is you are a somewhat expert on Norse mythology, right? Like what would you classify yourself? Like you're an experienced person when it comes to Norse mythology. Yeah,
definitely.
Right? So you would assume that the person standing next to Odin and with those kind of Norse characters would also be like a Norse-based character,
Is
right?
He not?
So that's Hercules.
Oh, cool. Well, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
I mean, in a Marvel sense, yes, but for someone who you're expecting a Norse character, and I believe he's a Greek mythological character.
He is, yes.
That's why I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bit annoying for you to be like, oh, they're putting the Greek character and the Norse characters next to each other.
So I spotted someone earlier that I think I know, and I'm just trying to find it because I'm struggling.
Oh, I've got to take a life for that. So you're on 2 lives left.
Yeah, I'm struggling to see the wheat from the. Have I done better than you thought I'd do?
I think you've done decently. Yeah,
I can't see the top row at the moment. That might be helpful.
Let's scroll to the top row. Yeah, so you got some extra characters there.
Oh, right. So on the left of the top row is Sasquatch.
Yep.
Top right is the Watcher.
I'll give you that. Do you want it for a point free? Do you remember his real name?
No, I don't.
It's Uatu, spelled Uatu.
I do remember that. Yeah, you're right. I'm going to go on a limb here and say the chick. No.
I tell you what, even on the list here, it says The Watcher. So just to reassure you, you've got it even more correct.
Yeah, I fucking nailed that one, didn't I? I'm now beginning to struggle.
So to prompt you a little bit, you see Thor.
Yeah.
You see there's some people standing behind him.
Oh, that's the 2 from the Fantastic Four that are married and have the daughter that's friends with the bad guy, aren't they?
Yes, that's how you know them specifically.
Yeah.
Do you want to go for some names?
I know them, but I don't know the names though.
So main guy.
Yeah.
Very self-aggrandizing name.
Yeah.
Very
Captain Fantastic.
Oh god, they're nearly
Mr. Fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, he doesn't have a title.
But he did call himself Fantastic.
I've already done Sasquatch, haven't I?
Yes.
I recognised him.
But next to Mr. Fantastic.
Oh my God, it's him.
It's her.
Oh, what, the one cuddling him?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know her name.
Do you remember her power?
Yeah, she's stretchy.
No, he's stretchy.
He's stretchy. Don't remember her name.
If I give you a power,
yeah,
take a crack at it.
I do, yeah.
Her power is turning invisible.
Is it Invisible Girl?
I think it's down to Invisible Woman.
Invisible Woman.
Let's consult the board.
I mean, I think I get those as a freebie because I knew who they were.
Yeah, Invisible Woman, but yeah.
Which makes the one in the same suit as them, just to the left of them, the Silver Surfer, right?
Ooh.
No?
Marvel fans are going to be really annoyed that you got that one wrong. Mainly because Silver Surfer is silver and holding a surfboard.
Oh, so who's that?
That's the fourth member of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I don't know that.
He can turn on fire.
Mr. Flamey McBodyson?
The Human Torch.
The Human Torch, of course it is, right. So I've got one more. I've got one more incorrect guess.
Yep.
I'm just trying to see if there's any easy ones that I've not scooped up yet. I mean, oh fuck, I can see Magneto in his armor.
Yep, that's definitely Magneto. And below him, there's at least one or two. I mean, there's one really obvious one.
Well, there's Colossus.
There you go.
I can't tell if the brunette to the two left of Colossus is Storm. I want to say it maybe is, but I don't think it is. The
brunette to the left of him, as in past, so next to the blonde.
Yeah.
I think that is a Jean Grey clone, who I can't remember the exact name of. So let's consult the board again. Yeah, that's like a Jean Grey clone called Rachel Summers.
Right,
who might be their kid or something.
I'm calling it That's Not the Last Guess because I didn't lock in a guess on that one.
Sure, yep, I'm not taking that.
Yeah, I think I might be done, mate. No, I can see, so on that row, the far left of the X-Men, I can just tell by his little goggles, but I can't remember what he's called. Cyclops. That looks like Cyclops to me.
So I'll give you that. Interesting backstory. At this point in time, that was a young Cyclops that had been brought from the past to the modern day. So he was a young Cyclops in the modern world.
Yeah, because I suppose these aren't all definitive versions of these characters. These are the ones that were floating about at the time,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, 100%. And if you go back to Colossus, and then top right of him,
yeah,
that's modern day Cyclops.
Right.
Who went a bit evil around this time and got the Phoenix Force, and then I think he died.
Because there's one at the top. So he's on the bleachers and he's got the chick with the wings to the left of him, and then he's to the right, yeah? Next to the guys on fire.
Hang on. It's someone who's actively on fire now?
Yeah.
Right.
Top middle.
Yep.
Just to the left of the Deadpool wording, and then he's kind of sat on the edge of a row. Yep. And then there's the chick with the wings kind of flying in through the vomitorium.
Yeah, so I'm going to hold you off on making a mistake. She is not Wasp. I think she's a new mutant.
Right, which means that he's not who I think he is.
So I don't think they're not connected, because she's coming into the shot. He's already sat down. I don't think they're together.
Just because he's big at the moment, like as in that character is physically big, I want to say that might be Ant-Man. But I've never read an Ant-Man comic, so I don't know what his actual costuming looks like.
So I'll give you it because it's a version of him. I don't know if it's the same character or not, but it's Giant Man. So, I'll give you that. And that also is the woman with the wings is Pixie, who is a new mutant. So.
Yeah, and she turns up in the film with Sansa Stark in it, doesn't she? Sophie Turner.
I don't know if that's the same one or not.
I've seen her in an X-Men film.
It might have been like a generic mutant power that they didn't name potentially, or it is the character and we're just idiots. I see a surfboard in the middle there with a man standing on it who kind of looks like he's standing amongst the crowd.
I can't see it.
That's
the Silver Surfer.
That's the Silver Surfer. Sake. Yeah.
To be honest with you, mate, I think I'm down and out here.
Yeah, I mean, you've done pretty well. I'm just seeing if there's any others that I can point out to you to be like, come on, you know this one. And I'll give you one just based on your specific Norse knowledge. So Red Hulk, you see there's a woman standing right next to him.
Yeah.
She is a known Norse character.
Is she one of the ones that's actually from the Norse mythology, though?
I believe so, yes. I can give you her Marvel rundown. She's kind of like part of the group of friends that Thor has in Norse, what is it called? Bloody hell, it's not Midgard, it's the other one. Asgard, yes. She's got a very short name, 3 letters.
Is it Hel?
Oh, No.
Or is it Sif?
It's Sif, yeah.
So
I'll give you that.
Yeah, so Sif is Thor's wife, but she doesn't really turn up in the Norse. She only turns up in the Norse mythology when Thor steals her hair. I read
I don't think they've done that in the comics yet.
So I actually read that story for the first one in my YouTube channel. So if you want to go check that out,
link in the showing up on the page right now.
Link showing up on the page right now. So that's Sif. So it's interesting that Sif has dark hair because in the Prose Edda, Sif is very specific that Sif has really beautiful blonde hair. So I would have assumed it was Freya.
Yeah.
But as soon as you said it was 3 letters, I was like, oh, it's obviously Sif.
So he's a big blue guy in the middle here.
Yeah, I keep looking at him and I don't recognize him.
Got one word name, very simple, very obvious.
Beast.
Beast.
Yeah,
there we
Beast.
go. Yeah.
But I when I think of Beast, I think of him being furry.
I mean, it's just far enough away that you can't see the fur.
Well, no, because you can see muscle definition. You wouldn't be able to see that. Who's the gorilla dude? The gorilla dude, right? You know,
whereabouts?
Like maybe 5 or 6 to the right of Beast in a suit.
Okay, yeah.
Gorilla in a suit.
Yeah.
Is he one of, you know that, I can't remember which comic.
So you're thinking of Gorilla City in the DC comics that's famous for Gorilla Grodd.
Yeah, different.
He's a different character. I think he is just one of those things where Marvel and DC just nick characters off each other, and they were like, well, their guy's talking gorilla, so we're going to make our own talking gorilla. So he's not taken off as much as Gorilla.
So I wasn't that far off the mark with that, even though I was in completely the wrong universe.
I mean, you identified him as a gorilla in a suit, so, you know, I won't give you that too much. Over here, very little appearance, and I'm not going to make you guess, but that is Frog Thor.
Great. Can we read some Frog Thor?
There's plenty of Frog Thor out there.
I can't see Loki. I'm not seeing Loki, which is really interesting. I'm intrigued by...
Sorry, his name is Thor Frog, just to get it correct.
Thor Frog. So I'm really intrigued by the Thor in the big purple dress. Can you just tell me who that is?
Oh, Fat Thor.
Is that what he's called?
No, that's not his name, no. Not as in like the Fat Thor from Endgame.
Oh, yeah.
So that is Volstagg, who is a Norse character.
Right, okay.
He's like one of his drinking mates, you know?
So he doesn't turn up in the Prose Edda.
Wow.
That's yeah, he's an original character. Yeah, so the mythology ones I'm not going to get any more of, I don't think.
No, that's fair enough. And yeah, I think you've done pretty well for a
Vision. I see Vision. At the top, right at the top.
Yep.
A little bit to the left. A little bit up. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that looks like an old style Vision. Let's consult the board and double check. The Vision. Yep, you got that.
That is Vision. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not quite down and out yet then. I recognize, you see the so right over the second D in Deadpool.
Yep.
For some reason I recognize that guy, but I can't think of who
You've seen him in a
is.
film, a team film, like a group MCU.
Right.
In space.
Oh, is that oh shit, so that's Chris Pratt's character?
Nope.
Is it? Oh, he's the big dude, isn't he? Yeah. I can't remember his name. So does that mean that the green chick is the one that Chris Pratt's into, and then the blonde guy is Chris Pratt's character?
I mean, let's consult the board as we need to.
Oh no, because the blonde guy has wings. Who in the MCU has wings? Or in the Marvel universe?
I mean, too many characters across Marvel and DC all have wings. So there we've got Drax, Gamora, Mantis, and someone called the Collective Man, who I've never heard of. So
I got him wrong, but Drax and Gamora I definitely nailed, because that's who they are. So I think that's me out.
You definitely didn't provide the names. But...
No, but there's some of these where I'm not going to know the names. I think that's me. I mean, under the rules of the game, that was my last proper guess.
Yeah. And I think you had a pretty good going. We didn't actively record your score, but here it is up on the screen. If you're listening to the podcast version, it's not up on the screen. But if you're listening to the YouTube, if you're watching the YouTube version, here is up on the screen now.
ADR it in for the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I got
-10.
+3 -76 for a total of
whatever the amount is I'm putting in now. Yeah, I say you got a decent run for a not dedicated Marvel fan, you know? And again, play at home if you will, you know? Just find this image, The Wedding of Deadpool, record-breaking Guinness record for most characters on a single cover of a comic ever.
So this is going to be a long episode, because now we're going into our first ever movie review.
First ever movie review, capping off Merc with a mouth, Merc.
First ever movie review, baby!
And here it is, us talking about it. Swipe now. And we're back. And we've Oh,
it's Ryan and Jamie from the future, baby.
I feel like a future. Is that a thing?
I feel like future Jamie, and we've just seen the Deadpool film, Deadpool Wolverine.
Standing outside the cinema with our recording gear. It's very quiet, luckily.
We're actually recording before the post-credits scene. All the nerds look very upset.
Yeah, there was a guy with the Deadpool plushie there, and I was like, I didn't bring my Deadpool plushie.
No, dude, right? There was a fucking dude. There was a fucking dude who had 3 Cokes, a tube of Pringles, some sweets, an entire large popcorn, and then he had a Wolverine action figure and a Deadpool plushie on our seat next to him.
If it wasn't for the toys, I just would have assumed he was a drug dealer because of the amount of disposable income he has to buy all the cinema stuff.
Because it was all cinema swag as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, the box with the faces on and everything.
Yeah, no. Yeah, poor dude.
There's me with my one singular drink, like, oh.
There's me with shit I bought from Poundland on the way.
So, also, before we get into it, I missed a bit because apparently our local cinema decided this was the perfect opportunity to refurbish the entire men's toilets.
I mean, Ryan, I've been. Do you know what? I held this in until we were recording because you've told me that you always have to pee mid-film, right?
Yeah,
and I've never been able to work it out, but I worked it out today.
No, so I know what you're going to say, and I'm going to combat it. I'm going to get on the defensive before you even
No,
finish,
you need to let me finish.
You're going to say about the big drink.
You are known for having a tiny bladder, and you buy a large Diet Coke.
Right, so I like the cold drink. Like, it's all well and good taking one in a bottle that's been in the fridge or whatever. I like the big drink with the big amount of ice cubes in it, and just like...
But it's like a litre of fluid.
Yes. But what I do is I intentionally dehydrate myself for like the hours before going to the cinema in an attempt to make it okay.
Like a bodybuilder going to a competition.
Like Hugh Jackman in his shirtless scenes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of Hugh Jackman, we're here to review the biggest hit of, potentially the biggest hit of 2024, starring Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. That's right, their Hot Ones appearance.
I know, it was great.
It was fantastic.
So I enjoyed the film notably more than I enjoyed the comic this week.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, this film, here's the thing, plot-wise, and this is why I've been banging on about like how important it was that the greatest Deadpool comic of all time, the 2012 run, the fact of having a comedian writing it meant it was funny. And this latest one just wasn't that funny. Here, you've got a bunch of funny writers and Ryan Reynolds himself, who admitted on Hot Ones that he has that level of social anxiety that makes him quip like a comic book character. So he's the perfect person to play Deadpool. It's the humor that carries it. And also we've got a whole YouTube video about fan service and the subject of fan service, which is maybe up now, depending on how quick it takes me to edit or not. We'll see. But basically, we're getting into that on the YouTube video. Here, I think we're just going to talk about what we liked and what we didn't like.
Yeah. So, firstly, I said this in the YouTube video, but it needs to be talked about here.
Mm-hmm.
The set pieces in this film are fucking fantastic, Ryan, aren't they? Like the fight scenes. I mean, you missed the second big fight scene.
Yes.
Which was great.
I was queuing for the one toilet.
But you were there for the best fight scene, which is... Deadpool and what? Spoilers abound, guys. Don't listen to this bit of the podcast if you've not watched the film yet, because I'm about to spoil it for you. Deadpool and Wolverine fighting in the car was so well done. And what I loved about it was that there were no stakes in this fight scene because you know they're two characters who both have a healing factor. And so they can just kick the living shit out of each other. And you know it's so low stakes that it becomes fun.
Yeah, they fight like they have healing factors.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because this Wolverine hasn't met Deadpool.
No, yeah, he didn't know him.
He didn't know who Deadpool was, and so he was going at it.
Yeah,
like there were moments when after there was their initial fight where Wolverine leaves it with 2 katanas and a little knife sticking out of him. And I suppose he must have seen Deadpool regenerate during that first fight because the second fight in the car, they're really fucking each other up and it's really good fun.
Yeah, the car scene was especially fun just because it was a different kind of fight that you normally see in these like superhero films. Like I think they were striving, and we'll get into more of that, they were striving for just making things a bit more different and a bit fresh.
Yeah.
Like the plot was by the numbers. It was a by the numbers MacGuffin. Was it hero rejecting the call and some finding themselves and then they rise to the occasion at the end and blah, blah, blah.
It was, I mean, I suppose from Wolverine's perspective, it was a classic hero's journey.
Yeah.
From Deadpool's perspective, it was less that. But yeah, no, it was a very standard superhero story. But again, I think the overwhelming sense that we've had talking about it since we left the cinema is that it's not about the plot.
No.
It's about them wrapping up the Fox Marvel sort of universe and teeing up their two biggest characters to enter the MCU.
Exactly.
Which it did beautifully.
And I would say generally the three biggest appeals of this film are, one, the fan service, which we've talked about, the humor, which is very on point for Ryan Reynolds style
really
humor.
Funny.
Like it's in spades here, so you have to like this kind. I've met and spoke to a bunch of people, including just people in my life, who are like, yeah, I don't really like Ryan Reynolds. And I'm like, as a fan, I'm like, fair enough. He's a bit much. Like, I enjoy it, but I totally get why someone wouldn't. Yeah. So again, it's another thing of you have to like this thing. Over the top fan service and Ryan Reynolds humor. Yeah. The third thing is the inventive action set pieces. And I think you're right there, where that's the bit that over-delivered for me. Absolutely. I wasn't expected to be as good as it was, and even based on the previous Deadpool films, and they were even better. So yeah, that's definitely a huge plus for this film. It's
interesting, because I hadn't seen the second Deadpool film, and I watched it this morning in preparation for meeting you. And the second Deadpool film has a way more inventive plot, and there's a lot more going on, but I much preferred this film.
Yeah, this is a better one. I said this on the way. I was like, people always say Deadpool or Deadpool 2 is bad, and I'm like, no, it's fine. It's because the first one was so good, surprisingly good. Yeah. People expected even more from the second one. But in a vacuum, I think if you looked at that one, you'd be like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. Not amazing, but fine.
It was a perfectly serviceable superhero film with some really fun moments.
Yes.
Whereas this is essentially a bunch of really fun moments cobbled together with some light plot exposition.
Yeah, and I think, like, as a rough gauge, I know Rotten Tomatoes is not the be-all, end-all of films, and there's a lot of issues with its rating and all that. I do think it's going to be, like, high 90s audience score. I think the people who go see it and review it early are the people who are going to love what it has to offer and are going to be giving it the high ratings.
I mean, we went on release day and are rushing out a review of it basically on release day because we both knew that this was going to appeal to us.
Yeah.
And so we were very much the target audience, weren't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we have a fucking comic book podcast. Like, we were the target audience of this because of all the fan service.
This and everyone who's seeing all the Fox films beforehand.
And this is what's interesting, is that you don't need a lot of Deadpool lore to really understand what's going on in this film. You need to understand some of the sort of more obscure Deadpool-related characters to get every reference and to get who everyone is. But realistically, what you need here is a pretty good understanding of all of the Fox Marvel films. Like seeing Blade and Elektra, and then also seeing Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Yep. Fantastic. Like,
it's great. But again, if you weren't really following those Fox films closely, the one that I'm surprised about, because the first two Spider-Men were Fox, weren't they?
No, Sony.
That's why they weren't there. Yep. Right, that makes a lot of sense.
But he did get the little, and it's in the trailers, the little, when he's being quiet in the car and he's just doing the web swing. Like, phew, phew, phew. He's like, stop doing that. He's like, phew. You could do like a lot of just back and forth on like, and this reference, and this reference, and this reference, and there will inevitably be those YouTube videos that are like every reference to Deadpool that's like 2 hours long, and
that's not us. That's not what we do, is it? We try not to do 7 things that you didn't notice about Deadpool.
Yeah,
even though that would make us. That audience engagement would be way better for us if we engaged in that kind of content.
But we're not creative shills.
We're not, no. There's a high level of integrity going on here. But I found it to be a really enjoyable cinema-going experience.
Yeah, this was, and again, we're not getting too much into fan service, but this was to like humor and fan service for a action film, essentially. What, like, in terms of like the lack of plot, in the same way that like the John Wick franchise is to action specifically. Like,
that's a really good example. Yeah, I agree.
You're not going for the, I wonder what happens in it. You're going like, I wonder which references and cameos are in it, what jokes are going to be in it, and then you're surprised by how good the fight scenes are.
Because I think the biggest character revelation is that we're not dealing with Logan from the Fox universe. We're dealing with a Logan from a different universe who fucked up.
Yes.
And we find out that he fucked up quite early on. And then Cassandra Nova, obviously Charles Xavier's twin sister, goes into his mind, and they have a conversation, and we discover that a bunch of humans hunted down the mutants, killed all the X-Men, and then Logan went on a rampage, murdering all of the humans, which turned them against the X-Men.
Yeah.
And the moment that we find out that this is the worst Wolverine and that he's not a very well-liked Wolverine, I knew exactly what they were going to say. In my head, I called that character revelation. And I think most audience members who have any kind of familiarity with the way that stories are told would probably also do that. But we're not there for that. That's the thing. It was a serviceable thing, and it gave Wolverine a good motivation for being there, and it kind of gave this Wolverine a reason to be the kind of grumpy, miserable, jaded Wolverine that we like.
Yeah, to pull back on we can't get the current one, not only because he's dead, but he's had all this character arc. Even if he was revived somehow, which would feel cheap, it would then be well, he's had these arcs and everything. He's had his emotional realignment. We want one who's broken.
Yeah.
I do think it was a nice little addition to the plot where it felt like both Deadpool and this Wolverine are kind of in the shadow of the best Wolverine.
Yes.
And that's, I think, a nice little plot point. Not subtle, but this isn't the film where you need to be subtle.
No.
But it was a nice little addition where little things like that added enough to the plot where I think most people won't care about the lack of plot. There's enough there to chew on without criticize. Most normal people, I think, won't criticize it. We will, because we're pretentious comic book fans. That's where we're coming from.
I think the lack of heavy plot stuff was quite refreshing, though, because coming off the back of the Avengers stuff that we've had over the past few years, that kind of late phase of the Marvel MCU that we were in, everything was very MacGuffin heavy and very plot heavy and quite intricate, and there was a lot of fake science happening and stuff like that. And it made those films quite stodgy and chewy for me, whereas this breezed along. This was a 2-hour romp, really. It referenced a lot of tropes that I think are really popular in cinema right now. There's the second act of the film largely takes place in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, which is very Mad Max.
Yep. Which they reference, even though they shouldn't have.
They referenced it a bunch of times, and then had a bunch of people in these post-apocalyptic vehicles that had been beaten together out of parts turn up and capture people. It was very much on the nose.
Yeah.
I think the use of all of these kind of unloved now characters from the early phase of the Fox-Marvel relationship was really fun. Yeah. Seeing Chris Evans as the Human Torch as opposed to seeing him as Cap.
Loved that. It was a great joke and a cameo.
It was a great joke and a cameo, and to be honest with you, I didn't clock it, but you nudged me and went, "It's going to be Human Torch," yeah. And then he was about to say something. Deadpool was waiting for him to say "Avengers Assemble," and he said "Flame on."
Yeah.
And there he was as the Human Torch.
There was a fan-casted joke, or fan-theorized joke that when they did an Endgame thing, and if they brought on all the Fox characters, you could have had Chris Evans, Captain America, and then alongside him flies Chris Evans, Human Torch or something. But yeah, Chris Evans, I think he's dying to get back into it. Same as Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. I think they're they got out of it. They're all right, I'm done. Now I'm going to do all my indie stuff and my independent and that or whatever. And now they're on the outside looking in, seeing everyone kind of playing and having fun in the MCU, be oh, well, come back in there.
And they were the two biggest figures. The other thing that I really liked about this film was that the post-credits scene in Deadpool 2 was him going back in time and addressing a bunch of things that happened. So he shoots the Wade Wilson from the Wolverine film.
Yep.
And he tries to get into the Avengers. He does a bunch of stuff. And this film is essentially contingent on that. So the start of this film, he gets picked up by the Time Agency. What are they called?
A TVA.
TVA. So I've not watched the Loki show, but I clocked that they were the people from the Loki Disney Plus show.
And Deadpool at one point literally goes, "Oh my God, it's the thing from Series 1, Episode 5 of Loki." Which
yeah,
I was like, all right, calm down.
But that's funny.
Yeah, it's him, yeah.
But he gets pulled in by them and he says, "Oh, is this about me going back in time?" And they say, "No, we know you abused your own timeline, but this isn't about that." And so it's sort of fun that they made it follow on from the second film so well. Even though this film is completely different in tone from the first two Deadpool films, It's a real divergence in tone, I think.
Yeah.
It followed on, and it felt like the perfect capping off of that as a trilogy.
Yeah, the stakes were so much escalated, where the first one was a very kind of weird thing to say for a Deadpool film. The first one was a lot more grounded, more down to earth. It was a personal vendetta and that kind of stuff. Second one then got into like time travel and fate and destiny and all those bigger things. And then this one feels like a natural escalation from there of like multiverse, universe, like all that kind of stuff. I do think a lot of people anticipated the TVA getting involved because of the time travel stuff. So it was a nice little kind of like, it's not that. It's not you think, it's something else.
And I think we all sort of knew that if we were getting a Wolverine film now, it couldn't just be a natural continuation of Wolverine's last solo film, because of course he was fucking dead.
And a more fully fledged character, and he needed to be flawed.
And so, there was always going to be some of that kind of current Marvel shenanigans. The multiverse stuff is ever present in what they're making at the moment. I'm not a massive fan of it, but I liked it here.
I think, if anything, this kind of pushed the boundaries in such a way. Like, it has a little excusable amount of like, it's parody, it's homage, it's whatever, so we can overdo it and it's a joke. But I think, and it's self-referential, being like, this is too much, and the one character being like, I think it's been fine, and it's only got better since Endgame, and blah, blah, blah. But I think it addressed that overuse of it in everything else, and I'm hoping that I think Marvel and like Feige and everyone are really kind of bending backwards to like, how do we do it for Secret Wars where we aren't overdoing it and everyone's sick of it?
And I think it's really interesting that this is a parody of something that's still happening.
Yes.
This isn't parodying, it certainly wasn't a parody of the tone of the Fox superhero films, which were all quite stern and earnest, weren't they?
Yes.
Realistically. It's very much a parody of what's happening in the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, and it's Fox's... I mean, really, this is the last Fox production, isn't it?
Yep.
Or was this a Disney production?
I mean, this was technically a Disney production. The last Fox production, I think, was a film called New Mutants, and it was like meant to be a horror-esque version of X-Men, which was a great premise. Like, I was excited for it. And then it came out and it's quite bland. And everyone was like, this was after the Fox announced merger, but it was still a Fox-produced film.
Yeah.
And everyone saw it and went, all right, we're done with the Fox.
Because this was 20th Century Studios, wasn't it?
Yes.
Which is what Disney's renamed Fox.
Yeah. Which is a good shout. Like, keep it. I like the idea of them keeping it separate. But like, Deadpool is in the MCU now.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a nice twist that everyone thought including myself, everyone thought the portal, the Doctor Strange portal, was literally going to be them jumping into the MCU or something confirming the MCU joining. So I think it was a nice little swerve that they put that in the trailer, and then it turned out it's like, there was a wizard here who left a slip ring, and I can use it. And I was watching that going, again, the plot, very weak, but I don't care. Like, I'm fine with it.
And again, you and I, obviously being Marvel fans, waited for the post-credit scene, and we were expecting a hint for what Secret Wars was going to look like, weren't we, I think?
Yeah, something like his involvement in the universe.
Which we didn't get. We got a callback reference to something that had been called back to a lot, which is
great joke.
Really funny joke. So Deadpool essentially was the reason that the Human Torch died. And we showed an edited version of the conversation they had that led to that, and it was really funny. It was a really great joke, but it was not the end credit scene that we were expecting. However, I think we got that at the start of the film, because there is a moment where we see Thor crying over a dying Deadpool.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see if they actually do include that clip.
Well, I mean, Secret Wars is in pretty late stage production, but that wasn't
they haven't filmed or anything.
Oh, they not filmed it.
No.
Oh, I thought
they're still settling on directors. They're still like actually securing a director.
I thought it had started filming.
Nah.
Because what we saw there, that was old footage of Thor. Because that was a much younger Chris Hemsworth.
No, that was an older one. He had like old scars and stuff. He had like a scar over one of his eyes and
stuff. But he had the long hair and he didn't have as much of a beard.
I think he's grown that back. Like, I think those scars were indicative of it being in the future.
Right, okay. So we were seeing like a pretty...
And they've really... It's a fun little thing for that to do, because they can just be like... If it never happens, they just go, it was a joke in Deadpool. And if you want to get technical, it's like, it was a possible future, but it's all changed now and whatever. But if they do that, like in one of the next Avengers film, they do that scene somehow, it'll be just they've set themselves up the opportunity to do a great callback, and everyone's going to go, oh my God, it was like in Deadpool 3. Like,
exactly, yeah.
So very smart of them to do it that way. Even if it's just like a joke thing where Thor's like, gets him and thinks he's dead, and Deadpool's like, no, I was just doing the thing because I saw it years ago.
Does this now mean that we're not going to get any solo Deadpool films for a while?
I'd be surprised if we got one in the next 5 to 10 years. I think like 10 or 5 years. Like I think I'd be surprised if we had another one in 5 years, because I think they're savvy enough, including like Ryan Reynolds and the director and whoever. I think they're savvy enough to know that after 3 films, you are then asking for a bit much to keep people invested in solo Deadpool films.
Yeah.
The trick is Deadpool team-up films, which this already kind of was,
but
with MCU characters.
Because I suppose we only got 3 solo Iron Man films.
Yep.
We got 3 solo Captain America films, or 2?
Yep. 3, yeah.
3, yeah, most of them got trills, didn't they?
Yes. Thor got 4. Thor 4.
But Ragnarok was almost more of a team-up, wasn't it?
No, Ragnarok was more of a single, because him and Hulk only teamed up for like a short bit towards the end.
Yeah. Or is it Love and Thunder that felt a bit?
Love and Thunder was a solo film. So I was going to mention Love and Thunder because this is, again, a very heavy comedic film.
Yeah.
And one of the criticisms of Love and Thunder was they were doing too many jokes.
Yeah.
But not enough of them landed. This one, I feel like the joke, like, was it the hit to miss ratio could be a bit more similar, but because people expect and went to see it for the humor, even if there are a lot of misses or jokes you don't like I've said before, you barely remember the jokes you don't like or that you don't laugh at. If then there's more you do laugh at. You don't think about the misses if there's enough hits. With Thor Love and Thunder, that's not meant to be a funny film, even though Ragnarok was. But there were so many misses compared to hits that I feel like, and that was a detriment to that film.
And this was largely very funny. I mean, something that I mentioned in the YouTube review that I really want to talk about now, just in a little bit more depth, is the use of non-diegetic sound here.
Yeah, fantastic.
So what we got here was a lot of those really great set pieces that we talked about earlier were put to fantastic old pop music. And so there is a moment where, right at the start, where Deadpool is beating up a bunch of the TFA people. What are they called?
TVA. The
TVA
Time
guys.
Variance Authority, I believe.
He's beating up a bunch of TVA people using Wolverine's skeleton to the backdrop of, I think, a Backstreet Boys tune.
Yeah, Backstreet Boys. Bye, bye, bye. I think
yeah. He was beating the shit out of a bunch of them to Bye, Bye, Bye. And then, he's dancing in between killing people. And there's a moment where he finally gets hold of Wolverine's hands and he uses the claws and he tries to Wolverine and realizes that Wolverining is very difficult.
It's very hard to pull those claws out of people.
Yeah, exactly. And, that was really funny.
Yeah.
I mean, you were sat next to me watching the film. I audibly giggled at a lot of it.
Yeah, and you weren't the only one. Like, it was, I mean, we were on opening day. Like, the big fans were with us. The people with the plushies. But naturally, they were going to laugh at that kind of humor. And this is what I was saying. Like, it's the third one. People know what they're getting in for. So if you're going to see this like on opening weekend, like you're going for this humor and it delivers at spades. I'd be fascinated. Like, we had this conversation in the YouTube video. What is the fan service? Is that a bit impenetrable for average audience? Same with the humor level. This is the most Deadpool film we've had so far. Like, that sounds like a weird thing to say. This was more Deadpool than the previous Deadpool films. I think because they feel the success of the franchise means they feel more emboldened to do their kind of humor.
It was entirely more self-referential than the first two.
Exactly. So
way more self-referential. I mean, even in the first 2 films, we haven't quite gotten to the point that we were at in the comics where he is referencing stuff that happens in specific issues.
Yeah.
But here he's referencing stuff that happens in specific, parts of the MCU. And that's Deadpool. That's what he does.
Yeah.
It's way funnier here than it is in print.
Yes, 100%. And this is the delivery is all of it. Like, this is what I'm saying. Even if the humor is comparable to whatever other comics, like Ryan Reynolds' delivery is what sells it, what gets it over the line.
Totally.
There's lines he says that other people would not be nearly as funny saying because he has that. Not only he's written it to himself, like he's one of 5 writers on this film. He's obviously written them to his. Not only has he written them, whether he wrote the jokes beforehand or what is a very common thing where he ad-libs a bunch of stuff on the day of shooting, and they'll do like 10 to 100 takes of like different jokes, and then they just pick the funniest one in the edit.
Yeah.
So when you've got all that compared to a comic book writer who's been given Deadpool, and they're just like, you have to be funny with it, and the comic book is like, all right, I'll try.
I don't know how to be funny.
Well, it's a lot asking someone, a comic writer, to be funny, which I said earlier on the review. But yeah, it's a stark difference comparatively. Are we saying that Ryan Reynolds is the best comic book casting role, like his as Deadpool?
Oh my god. I like Chris Evans's Cap. I've always liked Chris Hemsworth as Thor. And I think that...
But liking them, and I'm saying like the best. Like,
oh, yeah. I mean, it's between Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man for me.
True.
As the two best.
Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, I think, has delivered quite a bit. And
Hugh Jackman's Wolverine sort of held up all of those X-Men films for me. Like, I don't think any of them would have been a hit. I don't think those X-Men films would have been anywhere near as good as they were it not for Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely down to casting for those films. I don't think they're particularly well written. I don't think they're particularly exciting.
X-Men 2 is, I think, a really good story.
Yeah, it's good, but I don't necessarily...
Do you remember X-Men 2?
Vaguely, yeah.
It's the one that opens with Nightcrawler trying to... timing's not great, but he's trying to assassinate the president.
Yeah.
But that great scene, not for the subject, not for the context, but like a teleporter, like fighting the Secret Service and like disappearing and stuff like that. But it's just like a great example of like a superpower we hadn't seen on the cinema. Like, and it's like a great opening for an X-Men film.
I agree. I don't dislike those films. I just don't think they're particularly interesting or well written. And again, it's sort of Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, and Hugh Jackman that really picked them up for me. Again, with the the later stage prequel ones, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender really hold them up for me. But
also, I can't remember the actor's name, but playing J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh yeah, I mean he's fantastic, isn't he?
I wish I remember his name, and I don't want to stall like not me able to remember, but he was like perfect casting as well.
And he's been the only actor to play that character.
Yeah, like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah,
and like Ryan Reynolds. Like,
and I think this is the really interesting thing is that we are going to get a Wolverine in the MCU. I mean, Wolverine has been an Avenger, hasn't he?
Yeah, yep.
And so it makes sense contextually.
It was so weird seeing Hugh Jackman's Wolverine talk about the Avengers. Like that for me was like real cognitive dissonance where I'm like, whoa, like that's so weird.
I suppose for legal reasons they've just not been able to.
No, and fair, I completely understand why they haven't up until this point. It's just like surreal at this point to hear him, and it's not even like, I was once an Avenger, and like the cinema goes, whoa, he's just like, fuck the Avengers, and you're like, wow, that's crazy.
Well, he's about to be one, isn't he? Like,
yeah, maybe. I think Hugh Jackman, like, as much as he enjoyed this, I don't think he's going to be like in it. I think he's going to be a cameo with like some good scenes. I think that's the level that he's going to come back.
I mean, I think, and again, I talked about this on YouTube, but I'm fully gunning for a young Wolverine. Yeah,
I think everyone needs to. And to be fair, I wouldn't be that shocked if they went with Daphne, can't remember her surname, but as X-23.
Yeah, she was fantastic.
I think her, especially at perfect age to start like being in the franchise. People already, she's established. So with a new, younger Wolverine, if you cast someone new, there's going to be that comparison to Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
The fact that she's not Logan Wolverine, she's X-23 Laura Kinney Wolverine. I think that gives her a bit of distance from the original character where she can just establish her own
And
version.
I suppose we're going to be having new Captain America, aren't we?
Potentially, if they reboot the universe after Secret Wars, which seems possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to have, what's his name, Sam?
Oh, Sam. Oh, sorry, I thought you meant a new Steve Rogers. But yeah, we've got a new Captain America already,
we're going to have Sam Wilson as Captain America. We're probably going to have Jane as Thor for a lot of it.
Maybe. I don't know if it's been confirmed or not.
Well,
but because Chris Hemsworth is still around. He hasn't left.
No, I suppose he hasn't, has he? Potentially we're going to have Tom Holland Spider-Man in there a lot, I think.
Yeah, 100%. He's in it.
They've been really teeing him up to be an Avenger, haven't they?
Yeah. I think Benedict Cumberbatch his Doctor Strange is going to be like the leader, potentially. Like, because he's now the kind of the biggest one who's been around for the longest.
Well, he's the de facto most sensible, isn't he?
Yeah, it makes sense too.
And I suppose having Peter Parker in charge of Stark Industries, which is where it's now gotten to.
Has it?
Well, yeah, because he's in Tony Stark leaves Stark Industries to him, doesn't he? Like, he's in the fucking plane with Happy, like, using all Stark's tech.
Yeah, I don't think he's inherited it all. Like, I think Happy had that stuff and gave it to him to help him out in that moment.
Oh.
And also, have you seen No Way Home?
Yes.
You know, the end of No Way Home. Everyone
yeah,
forgets.
everyone forgets who he is, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's got nothing now. But that makes it more interesting when he then rejoins the Avengers. Or we might be at a moment, because it wasn't addressed, we might be in a place where Spider-Man is in the Avengers, but no one knows who he is.
Which would be way cooler.
Yeah, so if they saw like Peter Parker, they don't know him, but they see Spider-Man, they're like, oh yeah, I've known Spider-Man for years. Like, it's that weird thing now.
But no, I think this is a really fantastic teeing up. I think this movie did what it needed to do. I don't know that I would have enjoyed it much as a standalone film. I think it definitely screams of being sort of kind of the end of a trilogy, but also the start of something new. It's very transitional, isn't it?
And it referenced everything. Like, it referenced what it's done and the universe is coming from, but it's also heavily referencing where it's going. Yeah. Like, it had to do but all of that.
To the extent that we see Wade Wilson reference Marvel and the Avengers and get really excited about being in the sacred timeline.
Yeah, which he was already doing a bit of beforehand. Like, I'm trying to think if there's any specific ones. Like, he must have referenced like Captain America or Iron Man in previous Deadpool films, but I think that was like a sneak it in, like, ooh, little reference. This one was like, we have to go overboard with the references, because the plot of the film is about anchor points of universes and timelines dying out and being upgraded to the sacred timeline, which just happens to be the one with the Avengers in it. So it had to do a lot of referencing, whereas before it was always like a cheeky little reference, like ooh, that one for the real fans. This one was like, no, it's the plot. The plot is the references and him knowing all these characters beforehand. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, as a transitional film, it had to do a lot of stuff that most films don't need to do. Yeah. Whereas it because it had to do all that, it gives it less appeal to, as we were saying in the YouTube video, it gives it less appeal to casual fans. Like, I'd be shocked. I'd love to meet someone who doesn't know the MCU or Deadpool, and they just go to the cinema to like see a film and like, oh, should we check out this Deadpool film? I heard they're good. Like, I'd love to speak to that person afterwards. Be like, did you get anything from this?
Yeah, like what did you take away from this? Because
and they might be like, the bus fight was fun. Like, that's the level.
I mean, the bus fight was a lot of fun.
Exactly. But that's the level where they're like, oh, I like the fighting. Like, that's all they could really do, really, isn't it? Like, I'd be shocked if they enjoy a film like that without knowing the references.
And even some of the comic book characters that we see here, a casual MCU fan wouldn't know who Cassandra Nova is.
No, not at all.
Or Juggernaut.
But they went that Juggernaut, if they've seen the X-Men films, because Juggernaut was in the previous Deadpool film.
Oh, yeah, of course he was, yeah.
But again, they might not, if they haven't seen X-Men 3, they might not recognize this Juggernaut. Yeah. But they do, the film is smart enough where Cassandra Nova explains who she is and who the famous character, the well-known character the casual audiences will know, to be like, you know him? Well, I'm his twin. Like, then people go, okay, like, we get it now.
Cool.
And the same with the Juggernaut. Literally someone goes, oh, he's a Juggernaut, or like, look, there's a Juggernaut there. Like, they go out of their way to give people the connecting things.
What did you think to Nice Paul?
Oh, Nice Paul was fun. Like, it was a fun joke.
I mean, it was really fun because I clocked quite quickly that he didn't have super fucked up skin. Yeah. So I was like, this guy doesn't have a healing factor.
I thought the joke was, I went a different way. I thought the joke was going to be that he has the healing factor without the fucked up skin. So an even bigger reason for Paul to be like, you asshole. Like, another reason to be jealous of him. I thought that was going to be it.
He basically uses him as a human shield and then discovers he doesn't have a healing factor. Yeah. Which is really funny.
And then continues using him as a human shield because he wants Dogpool.
Yeah, because he wants Dogpool.
Very deep cut for anyone who may or may not know this, but it's a great Ace Rimmer reference from Red Dwarf. You have not seen Red Dwarf.
I have, yeah, but I didn't get the reference.
Ace Rimmer is, you know, Arnold Rimmer.
Rimmer.
Do you know Ace Rimmer?
Yeah.
The Ace Rimmer thing, isn't it? Like an alternate version of you that's way better and cooler and everyone likes more.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. I get that.
The original hating the one, even though everyone else loves them because they're so cool, but the original one being like, you asshole.
Does he reference that though?
No, he doesn't reference it. I'm saying, I'm comparing it to being like, it's an Ace Rimmer thing. And
I hadn't clocked it, but I get where you're coming from.
And most people are going to be like, a what? And like, fair enough, understand.
I mean, Red Dwarf is like classic British comedy sci-fi.
Yeah, comedy sci-fi, definitely.
Craig Charles in it.
Craig Charles.
Fucking Craig Charles.
That's how I remember how the Liverpudlian accent goes.
By
like,
Craig
I just
Charles.
say his name. Craig Charles.
Fucking Craig Charles. He used to DJ a lot when I lived in Manchester.
I was going to say he still DJs.
Yeah, well, because Manchester's closed. So I've been to a couple club nights he's done. He's a really good DJ.
Did you say Manchester is closed?
No, Manchester's close to Liverpool.
I think like, oh yeah, because Manchester's closed now. It's going to be like, what? Like,
yeah, they shut it.
I wasn't alerted to this. I mean, about bloody time.
Anything north of the M4 is completely shut now, mate.
Fair enough. Like, I totally understand their reasoning.
The Tories, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't even have to tell me. And Labour just like, we'll just leave that. We'll leave that how it is. So yeah, I think we've covered as much as all the nice parts without just going into mentioning every single reference. Like, broad strokes, I think we've got it there.
Totally, yeah. I mean, would you recommend it?
100%. I mean, anyone who's listening to this now, you've already seen it.
Well, this is it. I would highly recommend, if you're listening to this podcast, then this film is for you.
Yeah, and you've already seen it.
Well, yeah, you've probably already seen it. But also, if you've listened to the past 4 weeks of this podcast, you know enough Deadpool lore to get all of the jokes.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you the best kind of to sign off on it. If you liked Deadpool and Wolverine, you should absolutely 100% listen to our episode where we reviewed the good and the bad and the ugly arc featuring Deadpool, Wolverine, and Captain America, which is from the best comic book run of Deadpool that's ever been made, which was the 2012 comic book run written by Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn.
Yeah, the last episode. You should go back and listen to the last episode. It was great.
Yeah. And then listen to all the other Deadpool episodes, because they've all been great.
So this wraps up Merc with a Mouth Month, which has been great. And then I think past Jamie and Ryan are going to see us out. Yeah,
absolutely. Take it away.
Well, that was a great movie review, Ryan.
I think we were very informative about what we just said about Deadpool and Wolverine. AKA Deadpool 3.
Even though we don't know what we've said yet, because it's happening in the future. It's not spooky season, you can't do the noise.
It's the welcome to the world of tomorrow, that guy.
So thank you so much for listening. As we've alluded to in this episode, I am making YouTube content again. I'm going to plug it once more. Myths for Sad Grown-Ups on YouTube. It's essentially mythology-based bedtime stories for adults. I'm really proud of it. I think if you like this podcast, you'll probably like it. If you want to leave us a review or a comment, this is a great episode to do it on because this is, a huge undertaking for us and we're really, really proud of what we've done here. But other than that, you've sat through a long episode, so thank you so much for listening and goodbye.
Thank you, goodbye.